Prameya Ratnavali, the jewels of truth, translated by Kusakritha Dasa. Table of contents. Prameya 1 Mangalakaranam, the disciplic succession, Madhvakarya's 9 philosophical truths. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prameya 2 The Supreme Personality of Godhead is known by study of the Vedas. Prameya 3 The material world is real. Prameya and the Jivas, living entities, are different from Lord Vishnu. Prameya 5 The Jivas, living entities, are by nature the servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prameya 6 In both conditioned and liberated states, the Jivas are situated in higher and lower statuses. Prameya 7 Liberation does not mean an impersonal merging, but the attainment of direct association with Lord Krishna. Prameya 8 Pure devotional service grants liberation. Prameya 9 Direct perception, logic, and Vedic revelation are three sources of actual knowledge. First Prameya Text 1 All glories to Lord Govinda, who is known as Gopinatha and Madana Gopala. By his mercy, I shall now speak this excellent and subtle book. Prameya Ratnavali, Jewels of the Vaisnava Philosophy. Text 2 We pray that we may develop intense constant devotion for Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and Lord Advaita Prabhu, the controllers of all religious activities. They are pleased even with the dim reflection of devotional service. The chanting of their holy names delivers the entire universe. Text 3 All glories to Srila Madhvakarya Swami, the abode of transcendental happiness. Those who are learned and intelligent glorify him, for he is like a boat which enables the conditioned souls to cross beyond this realm of repeated birth and death. Text 4 A discriminating person pleases Lord Hari by remembering the faultless disciplic succession of bona fide spiritual masters, who enable one to attain the perfection of unalloyed devotional service. Text 5 The Padma Purana explains, unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master in the disciplic succession, the mantra he might have received is without any effect. For this reason 4 Vaisnava disciplic successions, inaugurated by Lakshmi Devi, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the 4 Kumaras, will appear in the holy place of Jagannatha Puri, and purify the entire earth during the age of Kali. Text 6 Lakshmi Devi chose Ramanujakarya to represent her disciplic succession. In the same way Lord Brahma chose Madhvakarya, Lord Shiva chose Venusvami, and the 4 Kumaras chose Nimbarka. Text 7 With great devotion we glorify the spiritual masters in the Gaudiya Vaisnava disciplic successions. A list of their names follows: 1. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead; 2. Brahma; 3. Narada; 4. Vyasa; 5. Madhvakarya; 6. Padmanabha; 7. Enrari; 8. Madhava; 9. Aksabhya; 10. Jayatirtha; 11. Jainanasindhu; 12. Dayanihai; 13. Vidyanihai; 14. Rajendra; 15. Jayadharma; 16. Purasadama; 17. Brahmanya; 18. Vyasatirtha; 19. Lakshmipati; 20. Madhavendrapuri; and 21. Isvarapuri. Advaita Prabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, who were all disciples of Madhavendrapuri. We worship Isvarapuri's disciple, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who delivered the entire universe by granting the gift of Krishna Prema, pure love of Krishna. Text 8 A summary of the Vaisnava philosophy follows. Madhvakarya taught that 1. Lord Vishnu is the absolute truth, than whom nothing is higher; 2. He is known by study of the Vedas; 3. The material world is real, plus, the Jivas, living entities, are different from Lord Vishnu. 5. The Jivas are by nature servants of Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. 6. In both the conditioned and liberated condition, the Jivas are situated in higher and lower statuses. 7. Liberation does not mean an impersonal merging, but the attainment of Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. 8. Pure devotional service grants liberation. 9. Direct perception, logic, and Vedic authority are the three sources of actual knowledge. These same truths are also taught by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself in his appearance as Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 9, a. 1. Lord Vishnu is the absolute truth, than whom Nothing is higher. Lord Vishnu's supremacy is described in the Gopaladapani Upanishad, therefore, Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, and nothing is higher than him. One should meditate upon him, chant his holy names, serve, and worship him. Text 9b. This is confirmed in the Svetasvatara Upanishad. When one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the ropes of illusion which bind one to this material world become cut, the material miseries end, and the repetition of birth and death in the cycle of transmigration also ends. By constantly remembering the Supreme Lord, at the time of death one attains the fully opulent spiritual world, far beyond the touch of matter, and all his desires become fulfilled. In this way he directly perceives the Supreme Personality of Godhead, than whom there is nothing higher to be known. 1.11, Text 9, c. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, 7.7, where Krishna says, O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Text 10. Krishna is accepted as the highest truth because he is the origin of both the material and spiritual worlds, because his spiritual form is all-powerful, all-cognizant, and full of transcendental bliss, because he is the reservoir of all auspicious spiritual qualities, and because he is served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune, and uncountable millions of other devotees as well. Text 11, a. The Supreme Lord is the source of everything. This is confirmed in the Svetasvatara Upanishad, 5.4-5. The one supremely opulent and worshipable personality of Godhead is the origin of the entire universe. He creates the material elements and their attributes, and he also transforms those elements. Text 11, b. That the Lord is all-powerful, all-cognizant, and all-blissful is confirmed in the following verse from the Katha Upanishad, January 2, 22. An intelligent person, who understands the distinction between material bondage and liberation, ends all material bondage when he understands the supremely worshipable personality of Godhead, who is full of all powers and opulences. Text 11, ce. Those learned in spiritual matters know that the word Atma means that which is full of spiritual knowledge and bliss. This knowledge and bliss is possessed both by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the liberated individual living entities. Text 12, a. The Vihasaniya Brahmana, March 9, 28, also explains, the Supreme Spirit, who is full of knowledge and bliss, grants the results to those who worship him with sacrifice. Text 12, b. The Gopaladapani Upanishad, 1.35, also confirms, Lord Govinda is beyond the duality of the material world, and he is not different from his form which is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. Text 12, c. Lord Govinda possesses a form of spiritual bliss, just as a melody, although apparently formless, actually possesses a subtle form within the mind. The mantra beginning Vijayanagana confirms that the Lord's form is not material, but a spiritual manifestation which is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss, and that there is no difference between the Lord and his spiritual form. Text 13, a. The Mundaka Upanishad confirms that the Lord's form possesses unlimited potency, the Supreme Person appears like a tree situated in the spiritual sky. From that tree the perfect and complete spiritual and material worlds have become manifested. Text 13, b. The Vedic mantras explain that the all-powerful Absolute Truth possesses a spiritual form, and although he remains in the spiritual sky, he is simultaneously present everywhere. He personally appears within the heart of the perfect devotees who constantly meditate upon him. Text 14, a. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, October 9, 13. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no beginning and no end, no exterior and no interior, no front and no rear. In other words, he is all-pervading. Because he is not under the influence of the element of time, for him there is no difference between past, present and future, he exists in his own transcendental form at all times. Being absolute, beyond relativity, he is free from distinctions between cause and effect, although he is the cause and effect of everything. Text 14, b. The Lord confirms in the Bhagavad Gita, 9.4-5 by me, in my unmanifest form, This entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Text 14, c. The fact that the Supreme Personality of Godhead possesses inconceivable potency, Yogam Isvaram, resolves the apparent contradiction in this statement by the Lord. This is the opinion of those who know the truth. Text 15, a. By the use of the word adi, etc., in text 10, the Lord's omniscience may be inferred. This is confirmed in the Mundaka Upanishad, 2.2.7. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is omniscient. Text 15, b. That the Lord is full of transcendental bliss is confirmed in the Taittiriya Upanishad, 2.4.11. Who understands the transcendental bliss of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no longer fears anything. Text 15, c. That the Lord is the Supreme Master, Friend, Teacher, and Deliverer is confirmed in the following quotes from the Svetasvatara Upanishad. The personality of Godhead is everyone's Supreme Master, Controller, Shelter, and Friend. 3.17. The personality of Godhead is the teacher who reawakens the eternal spiritual knowledge of the conditioned souls. 4.18. The personality of Godhead delivers the conditioned souls from the bondage of repeated birth and death. 6.16, text 15, d. The Lord's charming beauty is described in the Gopaladapani Upanishad, 1.13. The Supreme Personality of Godhead appears as splendid as a fresh rain cloud, and his eyes are as beautiful as lotus flowers. He has 2 arms and wears garments as yellow as lightning. He is decorated with a garland of forest flowers, and he is full of transcendental knowledge. Text 16. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is not different from his transcendental form and attributes, and any apparent distinction is an illusion. He is the original learned philosopher, and he is the source of eternal time. Text 17. This is described in the Narada Payakaritra. The independent Supreme Personality of Godhead possesses a spiritual form full of perfect and faultless qualities. He is not different from the hands, feet, face, belly, or other parts of his form, which are all made exclusively of transcendental bliss. Text 18, a. The eternal transcendental position of Srimati Lakshmi is described in the Vinu Purana. O best of the Brahmanas, Lord Vinu's transcendental potency, Srimati Lakshmi, is his constant faithful companion. She is eternal, and she is the mother of the entire material universe. She is all-pervading, just as Lord Vinu is. Text 18, b. Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu instructed his disciples in the following way: Srimati Lakshmi is the best of Lord Vinu's 3 potencies, and she is not different from the Lord himself. Text 18, c. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 6.8, describes the 3 energies of Lord Vinu. It has been heard in the Vedas that Lord Vinu possesses multifarious potencies, which may be divided into 3 categories: 1. The potency of transcendental knowledge, 2. The potency of eternal existence, and 3. The potency of spiritual bliss. Lord Vinu is also the master of all living entities, and the controller of the material cosmos both in its unmanifest stage, and its developments of the 3 modes of nature. Text 19, a. The Vinu Purana explains, the potency of Lord Vinu is summarized in 3 categories, namely, the spiritual potency, the living entities and ignorance. The spiritual potency is full of knowledge. The living entities, although belonging to the spiritual potency, are subject to bewilderment, and the third energy, which is full of ignorance, is always visible in fruitive activities. Text 19, b. Srimati Lakshmi, the supreme spiritual potency, is non-different from Lord Vinu. The spiritual potencies of the Lord are described in the following verses from Vinu Purana. Lord Hari's transcendental potency cannot be measured by the string of time, calibrated in minutes and seconds. May that supremely pure personality of Godhead be merciful to us. Text 19, c. Lord Vinu is described as the supreme controller, free from all material impurity. He is the object of Srimati Lakshmi service, and he is the supersoul of all conditioned living entities. May he be merciful to us. Text 19, d. The Vinu Purana explains that the Lord's spiritual potency has three aspects. O Lord, you are the support of everything. The three attributes Ladani, pleasure potency, Sandhinai, existence potency, and Samvit, knowledge potency, exist in you as one spiritual energy. But the material modes, which cause happiness, misery, and mixtures of the two, do not exist in you, for you have no material qualities. Text 20, a. Lord Vinu is one, and his constant associate Lakshmi is also one. Assuming many different spiritual forms, they appear to have become many. Text 20, b. The Gopalatapani Upanishad, 1.21, confirms that Lord Vinu is one, although he manifests in many forms. Lord Krishna is the worshipable, all-pervading supreme controller, and although he is one, he manifests in many forms. Those who are intelligent worship that Supreme Lord, who remains in his spiritual abode. Those persons attain the eternal transcendental happiness which is not available for others. Text 20, c. Srimati Lakshmi also manifests in many forms. This is confirmed in the Svetasvatara Upanishad, 6.8. It has been heard in the Vedas that Lord Vinu's transcendental potency manifests in many forms. Text 21, a. Although all of the transcendental forms of Vinu and Lakshmi are always equally perfect and complete in all circumstances, these forms are considered higher and lower according to the different qualities and potencies which they manifest or refrain from manifesting. Text 21, b. Lord Vinu is always perfect and complete. This is described in the Brataranyaka Upanishad, 5.1.1. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Text 21, c. The Mahaviraha Purana also explains, the transcendental forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are eternal and imperishable. They were not created at a certain point, and they are never to be destroyed. They are not products of the material energy. Text 21, d. All the forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are completely filled with transcendental bliss, knowledge, and all auspicious qualities. These spiritual forms of the Lord are free from all material defects. Text 22, a. Srimati Lakshmi Devi is described in the same way in the Vinu Purana, just as Lord Janardana, the controller of the universe and master of the demigods, incarnates in different forms, so also does his eternal consort, Srimati Lakshmi Devi. Text 22, b. When Lord Hari appeared as Vamana, the son of Aditi, Lakshmi Devi appeared as Padma, and when the Lord appeared as Parasurama, she appeared as Dharini. Text 22, c. When the Lord appeared as Ramakandra, she became Sitadevi, and when he descended in his original form as Lord Krishna, she was Princess Rukmini. In Lord Vinu's many other incarnations, she always appeared as the Lord's consort. Text 22, d. Lakshmi Devi appears in different forms, corresponding to the forms of Lord Vinu. When the Lord appears as a demigod, she assumes a demigod-like form, and when he appears in a human-like form, she assumes a human-like form also. As the Lord's transcendental potency, she is not different from him, and her spiritual forms are all perfect and complete. This is the opinion of the learned transcendentalists. Text 23, a. Some forms of the Lord are considered superior to other forms of the Lord. In this connection the Srimad Bhagavatam, January 3, 28, explains, all of the above-mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. Text 23, b. The Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared in his original form as the eighth son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Text 24, a. The same differing importance of forms applies to Srimati Lakshmi Devi. The Purasabodhini Upanishad of the Atharva Veda explains, in the supreme abode of Gokula in the district of Mathura, Srimati Radharani and Srimati Candra Baladevi stand at the left and right side of Lord Krishna. Srimati Radharani expands herself as Lakshmi, Durga, and many other potencies of the Lord which are all her incarnations. Text 24, b. This is also confirmed in the Gautamiya Tantra. The transcendental goddess Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Sri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval internal potency of the Lord. Text 25, a. The Lord's eternal abode may be understood by the use of the word adi, etc., in the quote from the Purusabodhini Upanishad. In this connection, the following question and answer are found in the Chandogya Upanishad. O Sanat Kumara, where does the Supreme Personality of Godhead reside? He resides in his own splendid abode. The Mundaka Upanishad also confirms, the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides in his own splendid abode in the spiritual sky. Text 25, b. The RG Veda, 1.154.6, explains, we desire to attain the transcendental abode of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, which is full of splendid Surabhikaus. The Sruti also explains, unlimited Vaikuntha planets are the abode of Lord Krishna, who is glorified by the liberated souls and who fulfills all the desires of the devotees. Text 26, a. The Gopaladapani Upanishad explains, among the 7 sacred cities of Bharata, the city of Mathura, where Lord Gopala resides, is a direct manifestation of the spiritual world. Text 26, b. The Jitanta Tantra explains, unattainable by the non-devotees, free from the influence of the 3 modes of material nature, and filled with the 6 spiritual opulences, the supreme abode of the personality of Godhead is known as Vaikuntha. Text 26, c. Appearing very splendid with gardens, forests, halls, and great palaces, that Vaikuntha world is inhabited by the Supreme Lord's liberated associates who are always engaged in the devotional activities of approaching the Lord, associating with Him, worshipping, hearing about and remembering Him at every moment. Text 26, d. That Vaikuntha world is beyond the reach of the material nature, and it is worshipped by the demigods. It is nicely decorated with wells, ponds, lakes, and various desire trees, and it is as effulgent as millions of suns. Text 26, e. The Brahma Samhita, verse 2, presents the following description, the super-excellent station of Krishna, which is known as Gokula, has thousands of petals and corolla like that of a lotus sprouted from a part of his infinitary aspect, the whirl of the leaves being the actual abode of Krishna. Text 27, a. The Supreme Personality of Godhead brings his own spiritual realm within the jurisdiction of the material world, and then personally appears there. This is the opinion of Lord Brahma and the other learned spiritualists. Text 27, b. Just as they consider the eternal, omniscient, and blissful spiritual form of Lord Krishna to be only the form of an ordinary human child, the foolish also consider the Lord's spiritual abodes to be simply a manifestation of material energy. Text 28, a. The Supreme Lord performs eternal pastimes. This is confirmed in the Brataranyaka Upanishad, the Supreme Lord performs pastimes eternally, in the past, present and future. The Atharva Veda explains, the one Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally engaged in many, many transcendental forms in relationships with his unalloyed devotees. Text 28, b. The Lord himself explains in Bhagavad Gita, 4.91 who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Text 29 because the Lord's forms, followers, and abodes are all unlimited, and because the Lord's forms and abodes are not different from him, the learned transcendentalists have described that the Lord's pastimes are eternally manifest. Second Prameya Text 1, a. 2. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is known by study of the Vedas, the Gopaladapani Upanishad confirms this, all the Vedas proclaim the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. and the Katha Upanishad, January 2, 15, also confirms it. All the Vedas worship the Supreme Lord's lotus feet, and all austerities proclaim his glories. Text 1, b. The Harivarnsa states, in the Vedic literature, including the Ramayana, Puranas and Mahabharata, from the very beginning, Ada, to the end, Anti-Ca, as well as within the middle, Madhya-Ca, only Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained. Text 2. The four Vedas, Vedanta Sutras, and supplementary Vedic literatures, all directly and systematically glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Madhava. Text 3. At different places in the Vedic literatures the absolute truth is said to be inscribable. This means that his qualities are unlimited and he cannot be adequately described. It is my opinion that any other interpretation of this is illogical and senseless. Text 4. They who understand the actual nature of spirit never say that the Supreme never takes birth, or that he is devoid of qualities, pastimes, and names, which constitute the realm describable by words. Those who are learned do not say that the Supreme cannot be described by words. Text 5. I do not consider that the absolute truth is without attributes and therefore beyond the descriptive power of words. 3rd Prameya. Text 1, a. 3. The material world is real because omniscient Lord Vishnu created this material world with his own potency, therefore it is real. The word asat used to describe the material world in the Vedas should be interpreted to mean temporary, not unreal. Describing the temporality of this world, the Vedas instruct us in the importance of renunciation. Text 1, b. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 4.1, explains, the absolute truth, who is one without a second, and who possesses no material attributes, desired to manifest the material world, and created the different classes of human beings, animals, and demigods. Text I, c. The Vishnu Purana explains, whatever we see in this world is simply an expansion of different energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is exactly like a fire which spreads illumination for a long distance, although it is situated in one place. Text 1, d. The Isopanishad explains, such a person must factually know the greatest of all, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self-sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. Text 2. The Vishnu Purana explains, O best of the sages, this entire material world is eternal and imperishable. When it is manifested from the Supreme, it only appears to have begun its existence, and when it again enters the Supreme, it only appears to be destroyed. Text 3. The Mahabharata explains, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose form eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, is real. Austerities are real, and Lord Brahma is also real. Because the living entities and the material world have taken birth from the Supreme Reality, they are also real. Text 4. When the Vedas explain that in the beginning only the Supreme exists, it may be understood that at that time the material world rests within the Supreme in its dormant state and remains invisible, just as a bird which has disappeared into a forest. In this way the knowers of the Vedas assert the reality of the material world. 4th Prameya. Text 1, a. 4. The Jivas, living entities, are different from Lord Vishnu. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 4.6-7, explains, two birds reside in the metaphorical banyan tree of the material body. One of them is engaged in eating the material happiness and distress which is the fruit of that tree, while the other does not eat, but only witnesses the actions of his friend. The witness is the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and the fruit eater is the living entity. Text 1, b. Although the two birds are on the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend who is the Lord and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. Text 2. The Bhatsarnhita explains, learned philosophers have concluded that the correct interpretation of the Vedic texts is determined by understanding their beginning and concluding statements, what is repeatedly stated within them, evidence presented within them which is beyond the power of the limited material senses to perceive, and the prayers and logical arguments presented within them. A correct understanding of these 6 elements leads to a proper interpretation of the Vedas. By studying in this way one comes to the correct interpretation that the living entities are different from the Supreme. Text 3, a. The Mundaka Upanishad, 3.1.3, explains, one who sees that golden-colored personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Actor, who is the source of the Supreme Brahman, becomes free from the reactions to past pious and sinful deeds, and becomes liberated, attaining the same transcendental platform as the Lord. Text 3, b. The Katha Upanishad, February 1, 15, explains, O Nasikada, when a drop of pure water is thrown into a reservoir of pure water, the drop does not change its nature in any way. In the same way, the individual living entity, when situated in transcendental knowledge, does not change his nature when he comes into contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but retains his individuality in all respects. Text 4, a. The impersonalist followers of Sankaracharya proclaim, I, the living entity, am the only Supreme, and other living entities, as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, do not actually exist, but are only imagined in the mind when there is ignorance of my actual nature. This is their polluted conclusion. The following Vedic quotation, beginning with the word nitya, presents the actual truth. It is stated so clearly that the impersonalists cannot twist a different meaning from it. Text 4, b. The Katha Upanishad, February 2, 13, explains, of all eternals, there is one who is the chief eternal. Of all conscious living entities, there is one who is the chief conscious entity. That supreme living entity, the personality of Godhead, maintains the others, and fulfills their desires according to their merits. Only saintly persons, who can see, within and without, the same Supreme Lord, can actually attain to perfect and eternal peace. Text 5. This verse states that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual loving entities are eternal and conscious. By affirming the eternality of both the one and the many, the distinction between them is described as eternal. Note, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura remarks in this connection that the impersonalists may object that the distinction between the living entity, Eva, and the Supreme, Isvara, is not an eternal distinction. To support their view they may quote many verses from the Upanishads, such as Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, everything is Brahman, and Tat Tivam Asi Svatekato, O Svatekatu, you are that. Srila Baladeva Vidyabhusana replies to their objections in the following way, Text 6, a. Just as the life force is different from the senses of the material body which are completely dependent upon it, in the same way the Supreme Lord is distinct from the material world which is completely dependent upon him. Text 6, b. The Chandogya Upanishad, May 1, 15, explains in this connection, the different senses, such as the voice, sense of sight, sense of hearing, and the mind, are all known as the life force, but the actual life force is different from all these senses, which are dependent upon it. They are named after the life force, although it is actually different from them. Note, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura explains in this connection that the Mayavadis may argue that the Vedas say, Sarvathun Kalvidatun Brahma, everything is Brahman, and Tat Tivam Asi Vatekato, O Svatekatu, you are that, and therefore the only thing in existence is impersonal Brahman, and everything else is an illusion. To counter this argument, Baladeva Vidyabhusana quotes this verse from the Chandogya Upanishad, where there is an explanation of how everything is Brahman. The various senses are dependent upon the life force, and therefore, they are collectively known as the life force, although the actual life force is different from them. In this way the senses are designated as the life force because they are manifested from the life force, although they are actually different from it. In the same way, the individual living entities have emanated from the Supreme Brahman, and they are therefore designated Brahman to show their source of origin, although they are actually different from the Supreme Brahman. Text 7. Some maintain that because the Supreme is all-pervading, the material universe must be identical with him. The Vinu Purana dispels this misconception. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, although you have created this material universe, and although you are everywhere present within it, you are nevertheless eternally distinct from it. Text 8. Some maintain that the universe is identical with the Supreme because the universe is the Supreme's reflected image, and others say that they are identical because the Supreme has divided himself into the various pieces that constitute the universe. Those who are wise do not accept these faulty arguments, because they know that the Supreme is simultaneously all-pervading and beyond the reach of the material senses. Note: Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura explains the defect in the arguments of these two groups of Mayavadis. The first group of Mayavadis say that just as the sun or moon may be reflected in various pots or reservoirs of water, in the same way, the Supreme reflects himself, the reflections being the individual living entities. This view cannot be maintained because the Supreme is, by his very nature, all-pervading. Something all-pervading cannot be reflected anywhere, just as the all-pervading dimension of space, upon which all the material elements rest, cannot be reflected anywhere. The opinion of the second camp of Mayavadis is that the Supreme has cut himself into many little pieces which are the individual living entities and the material elements. This view cannot be held because the Supreme is avasya spiritual, beyond the reach of the material senses. Because the Supreme is spiritual, imperishable, and without change, he cannot be cut into many pieces as the Mayavadis say. Text 9. O Mayavadis, you insist that the individual living entities and the Supreme are identical, even though this view contradicts all the descriptions found in the Vedic texts. Text 10. There is no evidence to support the erroneous conception that the Supreme is an amorphous mass without any qualities. Those who know the truth declare that those learned in the spiritual science never accept such a conclusion. Note: in this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura comments that the three sources of evidence, direct perception, logic, and scriptural revelation, tell us that although the Supreme is devoid of material qualities, he possesses innumerable spiritual qualities. That the Supreme possesses spiritual qualities, Bhagavan, in the ultimate issue is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, January 2, 11. Transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan, full of all opulences. 5th Prameya Text 1.5. The Jivas, living entities, are by nature the servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 6.7, explains, the Supreme Lord is the controller of all other controllers, and he is the greatest of all the diverse planetary leaders. Everyone is under his control. All entities are delegated with particular power only by the Supreme Lord, they are not supreme themselves. He is also worshipable by all demigods, and is the supreme director of all directors. Therefore, he is transcendental to all kinds of material leaders and controllers and is worshipable by all. There is no one greater than him, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. Text 2a. The Samriti Sastra declares, Brahma, Siva, Surya, Chandra, Indra, and all the other demigods are appointed to their posts by Lord Vinu and given extraordinary powers by him. They aerial the servants of Lord Vinu. Text 2b. The Sastras explain, innumerable Brahmas, Shivas, Indras, sages, and demigods, all worship the Supreme Lord Narayana, the best of the demigods. Text 2c. The Padma Purana describes the nature of the Jiva, individual living entity, in the following way: by nature the living entity is eternally the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari. He is never the servant of Brahma, Siva, or anyone else. 6th Prameya Text 1.6. In both conditioned and liberated states, the Jivas are situated in higher and lower statuses. Although all living entities are equally conscious and full of knowledge, according to the small capacity of an individual soul, they nevertheless manifest that original spiritual nature in varying degrees. The extent to which that original nature is uncovered is determined by their purity and devotion to the Supreme Lord. Text 2a. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 5.9, describes the individual spirit soul, when the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts and again each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts, each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. Text 2, b. The Prasna Upanishad, 4.9, explains the soul's consciousness, knowledge and other qualities. It is the individual soul who perceives the activities of the senses. It is he who sees, touches, hears, smells, tastes, thinks, and understands. Text 3, a. The soul pervades the material body, as Bhagavad Gita, 13.34, explains, O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body with consciousness. Text 3, b. The author of Vedanta Sutra explains, February 3, 14. Just as the newly risen sun remains in one place and yet fills the entire sky with light, in the same way the individual soul, although remaining in one place, pervades the entire body by consciousness. Yajnavalkya Muni, in the Brataranyaka Upanishad, April 5, 14, describes the eternality of the soul. O Maitreyi, the soul is imperishable, and can never be cut or changed. Text 4, a. They who are learned in the spiritual science say that although in one sense all individual souls are equal, they manifest different activities in the material world, and even in the spiritual world, they possess different degrees of pure devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 4, b. The following explanation is found in the Kothumaya recension of the Vedas. The degree to which one engages in devotional activities in this world determines his status in the next world. The Samriti Sastra also confirms, the extent to which one is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead determines the degree of his spiritual perfection. Text 4, c. Neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, and conjugal love are described as the 5 mellows of loving exchange with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who meditate upon the Lord in these different mellows attain the appropriate different destinations. In this way, the living entities possess different gradations of good fortune. 7th Prameya Text 1, a. 7. Liberation does not mean an impersonal merging, but the attainment of direct association with Lord Krishna. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 1.14, explains, by understanding the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from a bona fide spiritual master, one becomes free from the entangling ropes of identification with the material body, as well as the various miseries and the trap of repeated birth and death which spring from that false identification. By constantly meditating on the Supreme Lord, he becomes free from the subtle material body of mind, intelligence, and false ego. He attains the form of an eternally liberated associate of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world, and all his desires become fulfilled. The Gopaladapani Upanishad, 1.21, also explains, Lord Krishna is the all-powerful, all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he is the object of the prayers and worship of the demigods. Intelligent persons worship him as he resides in his own spiritual abode. They thus attain the eternal transcendental bliss which is not available for others. Text 1, b. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is manifested in many forms, but his original form is Lord Krishna. Those who worship that original form of Lord Krishna become liberated from this material world, and attain transcendental bliss in the Lord's eternal abode. 8th Prameya Text 1, a. 8. Pure devotional service grants liberation. The Gopaladapani Upanishad, 1.15, explains, devotional service means worship and meditation directed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service frees one from the desire for sense gratification both in this life and the next, and breaks the bonds of karma. Text 1, b. The Naradapayakaritra also explains, bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and, simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses are purified. Text 2, a. The Lord's devotional service consists of 9 parts, as the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7.5.23-24, explains, hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto him, in other words, serving him with the body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. Text 2, b. If one engages in the service of the devotees and the spiritual master, considering them equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he may attain the devotional service of the Lord. There is no other way in which this service may be obtained. Text 3, a. That one should serve the devotees, considering them equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, is described in the Taittiriya Upanishad, 1.10. One should serve devotee in the same way as one serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Text 3, b. The Srimad Bhagavatam, July 5, 32, confirms that this is the only way to attain the Lord's devotional service, unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaisnava completely freed from material contamination. Persons very much inclined toward materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord in this way can one be freed from material contamination. Text 4, a. That one should also serve the spiritual master as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is confirmed in the Taittiriya Upanishad, 1.10. One should serve the spiritual master in the same way one serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Text 4, b. The Svetasvatara Upanishad, 6.23, also explains, only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Text 4, c. That one should be devoted to the spiritual master in the same way that he is devoted to the Supreme Lord is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11.3.22-23. Any person who is seriously desirous of achieving real happiness must seek out a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of a spiritual master is that he must have realized the conclusion of the scriptures by deliberation and arguments and thus be able to convince others of these conclusions. Such great personalities who have taken complete shelter of the Supreme Godhead, leaving aside all material considerations, are to be understood as bona fide spiritual masters. One who takes the instructions of such a bona fide spiritual master as his life and soul, and sincerely worships and serves him, considering him equal to the Supreme as worshipable as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, greatly satisfies the Supreme Lord, who then gives himself to such a sincere devotee. The Lord gives such a devotee the power to preach his message. Text 5. One who has passed through the 5 purificatory rituals, and been initiated into the Vedi and Raga stages of devotional service, may directly perceive Lord Hari, and attain the eternal bliss of serving him in the spiritual abode. Text 6, a. These 5 purificatory procedures are described in the Padma Purana, Uttarakanda, 1. Austerity, 2. Wearing tilaka markings, 3. Accepting a new name at the time of initiation, 4. Chanting various mantras glorifying the Lord, and 5. Engaging in the performance of sacrifice, are the 5 purificatory procedures which grant the Lord's unalloyed devotional service. Text 6, b. In this verse the word austerity means to accept the branded marks of Lord Vishnu, the Kakra, lotus, conch, and mace, and also the marks of his holy names. Note, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura comments that this difficult austerity is not actually needed. The previous great devotees have set the example of marking the body with the Lord's holy names and symbols drawn in sandalwood paste. This is quite sufficient. Text 6, c. The Samriti Sastra explains, one who marks his body with the letters of Lord Hari's holy names drawn in sandalwood paste or other similar substances, purifies the entire world and becomes eligible to enter the Lord's spiritual abode. Text 6, d. The word Pundram in the previous quote from the Padma Purana, 6a, means tilaka markings, many varieties of which have been described in the scriptures. By marking the body with tilaka, or with the forms of the Lord's lotus feet, or other auspicious marks, the body is sanctified and designated as temple of Lord Hari. Text 6, e. The word nama means name. This means that when one is initiated by a spiritual master, one should accept a new name indicating that he is a servant of Lord Hari. The mantra referred to is the 18-syllable Gopala mantra, which is considered non-different from the spiritual form of the Lord. Text 6, f. By the word yaga, the worship of Salagramasila and other deity forms of the Lord is described. In this way, the saintly devotees find many references in the Puranas and other Vedic literatures to describe the 5 purificatory processes. Text 7. The ninefold process of devotional service described in Text 2a may be considered in 2 stages. The first stage is called Vidyabhusana, or following the rules and regulations of Bhakti. The second stage is called Rasai, and it is attained when there is spontaneous attraction to Krishna and his service. Lord Krishna becomes personally very satisfied by this loving service, he fulfills all the desires of his servitor and brings him back to the spiritual realm. Text 8. By the process of Vidyabhusana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped in his Narayana feature, manifesting 4, or sometimes 8 or 10 arms. By the process of Rasai Bhakti, the Lord is worshipped in his original human-like form as the son of Yasoda. Text 9. One should worship the tulasi plant, the banyan and amalaki trees, and everything else which is in relationship with the Lord. One should not fast on the Ekadasi day which partly falls on the Dasami, and one should not fast on the Janmastami day which falls on the Saptami. Text 10. A learned and intelligent devotee, fixed in service to the Lord, should reside in a holy place, aspire for the association of advanced devotees, and engage in the regular and special activities of devotional service. Text 11. One should carefully avoid the 10 offenses in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Text 12. Unalloyed devotional service, which causes one to attain Krishna, is described here. When that devotion is enriched with renunciation and scriptural scholarship, it very quickly bears fruit. 9th Prameya. Text 1-9. Direct perception, logic, and Vedic revelation are 3 sources of actual knowledge. This is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, November 16, 17. The 4 Vedas, direct perception, the Puranas and Vedic histories, as well as logic are 4 sources of actual knowledge. Text 2. Direct perception and logic are actual sources of knowledge when they confirm the authoritative statements found in Vedic revelation. Only foolish persons bewildered by the illusory material energy of the Lord accept the misleading evidence of direct sensory perception. Text 3. Logic and mental speculation are inconclusive and unreliable sources of knowledge. They may be compared to the forest fire on top of a hill which has just been extinguished by showers of rain, and thus yields no light, but only a great quantity of smoke. Intelligent persons do not therefore consider logic and sensory perception to be independent and infallible sources of knowledge, but rather they are dependent assistants to the principal source of knowledge, the Vedic revelation. Text 4. When logic confirms the Vedic revelation, it should be accepted, but otherwise not. Text 5a. The proper use of logic is described by Yajnavalkya Muni in the Brataranyaka Upanishad, 4.5.60 Maitreyi. One should directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead by hearing about him from a bona fide spiritual master. In this way one can properly understand his position, and constantly meditate upon him. Text 5b. Logic which has no foundation in scriptural revelation is described in the Katha Upanishad, 1.2.9. My dear Nasikita, simply by logic one will never be able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but only by the descriptions of a realized spiritual master. Text 6. The Samriti Sastra confirms, one should reject the dry logic that considers, How important is it that one's reasoning follow the conclusion previously described in Vedic revelation? It cannot be very important. Such logic leads one to the process known as speculative guessing. Text 7a. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in the statements of the Upanishads, and for this reason Vedic revelation is the best of all sources of knowledge. They who spurn the Vedic revelation do not have the power to properly understand the Supreme. Text 7b. This conclusion is confirmed in the Vedas. One ignorant of Vedic knowledge cannot actually understand the Supreme. Shruti Sastra, please tell me about the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is revealed in the Upanishads. Brataranyaka March 9, 26, concluding words. Text 1. The philosophy of Madhvacarya may be summarized in the following way. 1. Lord Hari is the absolute truth, and nothing is greater than he. 2. The material world is real. 3. The jivas, living entities, are different from Lord Hari. 4. The jivas are by nature Lord Hari's servants. 5. The jivas are situated in varying positions both in the material and spiritual worlds. 6. Liberation does not mean an impersonal merging, but the experience of the bliss of devotional service. 7. Pure devotional service grants liberation. 8. Direct perception, logic, and Vedic revelation are the three sources of knowledge. And 9. Lord Hari is revealed in the Vedic scriptures. Text 2. The 9 jewels of philosophical truth formulated by Madhvacarya have been described in this book. Let those who are actually intelligent, respectfully place this book, Prameya Ratnavali, within their hearts. Text 3. This concluding verse may be interpreted either for Lord Krishna or Lord Caitanya. Interpreted for Lord Krishna, it may be translated in the following way. May Lord Krishna, whose form is spiritual and full of knowledge, and who mercifully purified and delivered Gayendra, the king of the elephants, eternally reside within our hearts. Interpreted for Lord Caitanya, the same verse may be translated in the following way. May Lord Caitanya, who is actually Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who mercifully purified and delivered Maharaja Prataparudra, eternally reside within our hearts.